Forge FC is ready for their upcoming match.
Simply stunning stuff! And finally, their goal! My word, what a rocket!
Now, let's get you up to date with Anthony Urciuoli and Match Day Preview on the Forge Audio Network.
Hey, Forge fans, it's the Forge Audio Network. I'm Anthony Urciuoli, and it's the Match Day Preview. This is the official home of your reigning, defending, undisputed Canadian Premier League champions, Forge FC. This weekend, Forge back at home, Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton. 7 o'clock start, Halifax making the trip to Hamilton. And Forge coming off a disappointing result at home last weekend. After leading York 1-0 at half, Forge allowed the match to it turned into a bit of a track meet. It was 1-1, then Forge went up 2-1, then a pair of uncharacteristic mistakes handed York 2 goals on a platter before the league's all-time leading goal scorer and the 2023 scoring leader, Taron Campbell, scored his second of the match on a PK rebound, and that's the way the match ended. 3-3. They showed some character and battling back, but I think the club will look back at several self-inflicted wounds and a match where Forge ultimately let 2 points slip away. But that's sports, that's soccer, and things happen throughout the course of a match. And Forge is in a great spot heading into another home match this weekend against Halifax. There were a lot of positives in that match against York. One of them was the performance of the newest member of Forge, Benny Banga. In his first ever start with the club, Benny was a problem. Right off the opening kickoff, when he was on the pitch, defenders were on their heels. He's not afraid to take players on, 1-on-1. He draws a crowd with his skill and his pace and his creativity. And he creates a lot of space for his teammates because of it. And to me, that's what stood out the most. Forge's second goal came off a beautiful delivery from Kyle Becker. Obviously, no surprise there. But Bex was left wide open after Benny Banga delayed. He drew in 4 York players before handing the ball off to Becker. And you have to believe his impact could grow as he builds more chemistry with his new teammates. So very positive signs. And an already dangerous attack, even more dangerous heading down the stretch now, because we are very close to crunch time as the playoff positioning just points are at a premium. Positioning is the jostling for position. Every team is hungry at this point. Next up for Forge is the Wanderers, who continue to be dominant at home. They claim their 6th win in 9 games at Wanderers grounds this season, picking up a 3-0 win over Vancouver last Saturday. Morelli finished with a brace, and this is and I think this is the key, this is a much different Halifax side than Forge saw in their previous 2 meetings. First, Forge will see Canadian national Daniel Henry for the first time in a CPL match. You may remember Henry was actually a guest of Forge FC's last season, along with Richie Larea ahead of the big send-off for the men's team ahead of the World Cup. And I chatted with the two at halftime. I did an interview, with the fans and everything. And they both sang the praises of the CPL. Well, Henry is now one of us. And you have to imagine he'll see a lot of Taron Campbell this week. And assuming, again, I almost on a weekly basis, this league is hard to figure out sometimes. Just in terms of lineups, there's a lot of, and it's because of different rules related to, young players and minutes and a lot, the reality is a newish league, it doesn't garner the same level as media coverage as, some of the leagues that have been around for, some of them hundreds of years. So it is tough to get kind of inside reporting on who's in, who's out, who's injured, who's going to be in the starting lineup, those kinds of things. And so I often, admittedly, will talk about, sing the praises of a player that Forge is, about to face and go up against. And then all of a sudden they're not even in the starting lineup. So we will say if Daniel Henry is in the starting lineup, he will likely see a lot of Taron Campbell this weekend, assuming Taron Campbell's going to be in the lineup at some point. Again, that we would expect that. But like I said, things, this league. Sometimes it's tough to keep your finger on the pulse of who's in, who's out. And it's also what kind of makes things exciting, because this league is very unpredictable and it lends itself to the parity that we see. So barring an unexpected lineup change, that's going to be my preface, which is supposed to come before you say the thing you're going to say, but we're going to backtrack. Barring an unexpected lineup change, Henry and Campbell should be a very interesting matchup. Secondly, Wesley Timoteo, who we've known him in this league as an attacker for the most part, but Halifax, they moved him to fullback, and it has completely changed the dynamic of that build and that attack. Midfielder Lorenzo Caligari has been the motor for the Wanderers all season, but now with Timoteo playing left back and Caligari often plays on the left side of the midfield, Halifax, it's a multi-layered approach to their build and their attack, and it should be interesting to see how Forge counters that with their player selections on the right side. We'll see some of that gamesmanship this weekend as Forge takes on Halifax. Going into this match, where we stand in terms of the table, Forge in third place, but it is oh so tight at the top of that table, because Forge is in third with 30 points, but they're just 2 points out of first place. Pacific holding down that spot right now. Both Pacific and Calvary have a match in hand on Forge. Calvary, Forge level on points. But this could be, by the end of this match this weekend, Forge could be just sitting alone in first place. It's that close. In fact, here's how close it is. This is how wild the table is. Halifax is holding down the fifth and final playoff spot. Right now, they would be playing Ottawa in a play-in game for the playoff under the new format. This is how tight things are. Forge is in third place. If they win, they would be in first. If they lose, they could fall behind Halifax, who's in fifth place. Halifax is 2 points back of Forge. Forge could either be in first or fifth place after their match this weekend. That is how close things are. And I know it's a little too close for comfort. As a fan, you'd love to see Forge just kind of just barrel forward. But just from a holistic, looking at the league as a whole and what we're trying to accomplish, the big picture, this season's been fantastic. I mean, there is a 6-point difference between first and sixth place right now. And like we talk about every week, the teams are all playing each other. So you get these 6-point swings game in, game out. It'll be interesting. We'll see how things play out. Forge, there's only 8 matches remaining. It's essentially just 8 weeks left in the season, 2 months. And so much can happen during that span. I mean, when you think about it, you have 8 matches. There are 24 possible points for Forge. It's a lot of points. So the swings could go either way. The one thing, though, and if we look at this season and what Forge has done, an area where they just have not measured up to their potential is their play at home, and maybe play at home is the wrong, but the results at home is probably a better way to put it. They have had some tough luck, draws and losses at home this season where they've dropped points and just had some missed opportunities. They have the 5th best home record right now in the league. And I mean, there's your difference in the standings, right? You pick up 1, 2, 3 of those points you probably should have gathered at home, and you're sitting in first place right now. But again, it's the nature of the sport. So Forge, 3 wins, 5 draws, 2 losses, and 10 matches at home. So that is something they want to desperately try to improve, because those drop points will likely, be the difference between first and maybe third. Away from home, Halifax, very much a struggling. Halifax is the best home club in the league. Not a big surprise. We know what Wanderers grounds represents, what it brings. Just the character, the support out east is remarkable. I love it. Someone made a comment in the press box last week that Halifax is everyone's second favorite team. And I think a lot of it has to do with just there's heart there. There's character, a dedicated fan base, that very just old school kind of smallish, intimate stadium, and the crowd is just so into it. So it's not all that surprising that they have the best home record in the league. But having said that, on the road, a lot to be desired if you're Halifax. The 6th best home record. They have 9 points in 10 tries, just one win on the road this season in 10 tries. So certainly an opportunity for Forge FC going into this one. Head-to-head, Forge, the dominant club, 8 wins, 7 draws, 3 losses all time against Halifax. This season, though, Forge has yet to beat Halifax. They played to a 1-1 draw, another example of a match where Forge dropped some points, and that was back in April. Then they played in June in Halifax, and the Wanderers came out with a 2-1 victory in that one. So they'll play this weekend, and there'll be one more match between the two sides in September. Head-to-head streaks, Halifax, 7 straight matches without a clean sheet against Forge. Forge, they've scored first in 5 of their last 7 matches against Halifax. We know how important that first goal is in this league. And Forge, they have led at the half in 5 of their last 7 matches against Halifax. Team streaks in general. Forge, for a while there, when things weren't going right, that all-important first goal was not going Forge's way. They were giving up the first goal quite a bit. But as Forge's season has kind of turned around and become more consistent with the results they want to see, they've scored first in 5 of their last 6 matches. And they've also had more than 10 corners in 4 of their last 5. Halifax, the opposite. They've had less than 10, in 5 of their last 6. So Forge, the pressure, their shot attempts being represented in that stat with more than 10.5 corners in 4 of the last 5 matches. I talk about the player ratings, which I like because now there is some interpretation with player ratings because it is an out of 10 score that it just takes in all facets of the game: your passes, your tackles, your takeaways, your giveaways, your shots, your goals, your production. It kind of takes a full holistic view of your performance and gives you a score out of 10. Kyle Becker, this year, according to SofaScore, the most complete player in the league. No surprise to anyone listening to this. With a 7.39 rating out of 10, that puts him comfortably in the league lead. And another Forge player on that list is Tristan Borges. He is ranked 9th with a 7.08 rating. Key passes. It's what the stat, it's as it would indicate. Key passes, ones that lead to a quality scoring chance. Number 1 in the CPL, Kyle Becker. Once again, no surprise. 2.3 per match. That is the best in the league. Tristan Borges is tied for 3rd in key passes per match at 1.9. Average rating as a team. So that stat I gave you, that all-encompassing number out of 10, in terms of just team numbers, not individual player, interestingly, Pacific is number 1. Halifax is number 2 with 6.85. It's kind of surprising. Just in terms of a complete game, Halifax is 2nd in the league. So this is not a club you want to sleep on. Now, that is heavily skewed because of their home performance. It's been 2 different squads, home versus away. But either way, this team is obviously clearly very capable, and big chances missed this season. York 1, Forge 2, Halifax 3. So Forge and Halifax have created quite a bit this season, and both have been unlucky at times. Forge a little more so. They're still clear, like that. The hitting the woodwork stat that I was giving out earlier in the year, where Forge had like 3 times the amount of posts as the rest of the league on average. It's been better. The luck has at least turned a little bit in their favor, but still some opportunities missed for Forge FC. But in terms of creation, possession, doing all the right things, Forge FC still very much among the league leaders in that respect. For a Halifax centered view on things, because we don't get to watch Halifax as often as we like, at least I don't. Gary Griffiths, he's been on the program before. He's from a ways, HFX on Twitter. He's had his finger on the pulse of this club, covering the Wanderers since day one. He's been on the Forge Audio Network before. Gary Griffiths joins Match Day Preview. All right, Gary, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much. This is my three-peat, I believe.
It is a three-peat.
Yeah.
The excuses are gone. This is like you have to deliver now on the third one.
I know the first two were like my practice runs, weren't they? And this time I've got to like some real analysis now.
Well, not so coincidentally, because it actually makes sense that this, it's the third time we've chatted, and this is the third time Halifax and Forge will be playing this season. This is a different Wanderers club. I mean, for starters, Daniil Henry is now a member of Halifax, and the Canadian national made the move to the CPL, joining the Wanderers about a month ago, I guess. Daniel Nimick, who he's had a fine season for the Halifax backline. Now you add a proven center back like Henry. What's been the impact of his arrival?
There's been a league-wide impact because I think if you'd have polled every single CPL supporter when the news broke that he was joining a club in the league, I think everyone would have said, oh, he's joining Forge. Because historically, as a club, that's what you've done. Because Bobby has incredible connections with people in the game. So you'd have laid money on him going to Forge. So the fact that we managed to get him, I mean, that speaks a lot to the progress the club has made this season in becoming a much more attractive place for players of that caliber even to come. But I think mainly it speaks to the pull of Patrice, the head coach of Halifax Wanderers, because he has such a good name within the game in Canada. Like when Daniil Henry signed, he spoke about the fact that he had spoken to international teammates of his who had been coached by Patrice and how highly they all spoke of him. Wow. So the fact that we now have a coach who has that kind of pull is wonderful. And you just see the effect that Henry's had on the squad as well. Like you listen to interviews with Cale Loffrey, with Dan Nimick, who have been our centre-back pairing, and they really speak to the level of professionalism he's brought to the club, the level of advice that he gives them, the way he's taught them to control to control their emotions in games, to manage kind of the last minute of games as well. And it's been wonderful. And he's been so good for the club in such a short amount of time as well.
And, just talking about it being a different club that Forge has been used to, we know what Caligari brings to the Wanderers and how much of a driving force he is in the club's build and attack. But the move, Wesley Timoteo, traditionally been an attacker. He's been a number 10, moving to fullback. And suddenly Halifax has some layers to that build and that attack. What can you tell us about the evolution of the club? I guess they played Forge in, I think, April, June. How has the club changed over that time, and just how much different does it look?
Well, Patrice came in with a really clearly defined identity and way of playing. And it's quite, for the CPL, it's quite a complex way of playing, actually. And I'd say some of the stuff that Bobby's done with Forge is the most comparable in terms of how progressive it is and how kind of on the cutting edge of what top coaches in the game are doing is closer to him than anyone else. So it was always going to take the players a bit of time to get used to this way of playing. We had a lot of new players as well. Like it was a huge turnover in the off season. So I think even though we didn't win for the first, 8 games, but you spoke to people who were kind of a bit more knowledgeable about the game, and there was nothing but positivity, because when you watched us week in, week out for 90 minutes, you could see the progression the club was making. And every week we kind of got a little bit better, minus the York game, which was terrible. But other than that, we were always getting better. So I think we've developed into a really modern team now. Positional play, players playing in zones, players having specific roles within those zones. And that stuff, you don't just learn that stuff overnight. It takes time. And you can see now we've reached a point, once we kind of got the monkey off our back about getting the first win. Now we've reached the point where the confidence is there as well as the system. And once those two things kind of merge together, then yeah, we've improved no end. And you mentioned Wesley Timoteo there. He's a great example of a player who's adapted to this new way of playing, because you're right, he was primarily an attacking player in Edmonton. He played as a right winger there. He cut in onto his left foot. He kind of played in attacking roles at the start of the season, but then we had a bit of an injury shortage at left back. And over the past 5-6 games, he's really made that position his own. He's a left back for us now, and a left back who not only can do kind of the attacking stuff, he's a left back who, within the way we play, our left back tends to also be kind of a left centre back, because we normally leave 3 at the back when we're attacking. So he's learned how to do that, which is, I didn't think he would be able to do that. I thought if he's a left back, he has to be like an overlapping attacking left back. But the fact that he's adapted and can play centrally, incredibly impressive. And it speaks to the level of coaching, and it also speaks to the level of Wesley himself to be able to kind of recognise our wide attacking players are very good and not necessarily the easiest players to move out the team. So he had a choice to make. Can I adapt to a different position instead? And he did.
Is it so? Then what about the actual attackers on this squad? Is the club getting enough out of them?
Yeah, I think so, because we tend to what we've never really done, because we normally had Joao Morelli, sorry, someone will correct me, scoring all of our goals, but we've managed to spread the goals around the team a lot more now. So we've got, I think, 4 players on 3 goals, 1 player on 4 goals, 1 player on 2 goals. So there's been a much nicer spread of the goals, and that's allowed us not just to rely on one player. And I apologise for those little noises you can hear. My cat is lurking in the background.
You know what? I had the same problem earlier in the broadcast.
Okay.
It's just, it comes with the territory.
Maybe they're talking to each other.
Maybe, and we kind of live in their world. So exactly, who are we to try and silence
anything,
them?
We should be apologising to them for talking while they're trying to meow at us.
I totally agree. It's interesting. So as the Wanderers, as the club has gotten better and as the play has picked up and it just a much more capable club in terms of just producing offensively, there was still kind of that Jekyll and Hyde, Halifax, very good at home, struggling on the road a little bit. Has that balanced a little bit as the club has kind of, because it was a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde type thing, but has it become more balanced, home versus away for Halifax?
Level of performance, I would say, yeah, absolutely has, but the results haven't really reflected that. It took us until a few weeks ago to finally win an away game. So although the performances have very much been there away from home for a lot of the season, we took a few months to actually get the first win. But I expect we'll pick up, we've only got 4 away games left now. So hopefully we win at least 1 or 2 of them, because you can't just rely on home form, because it becomes there's a bit too much at stake if you're only winning your home games. You really have to win them. So yeah, we need a few more points away as well.
It's incredible, the parity in this league, how dramatically the table changes from week to week. I'm looking at the standings going into this weekend's matchups, and you have, Forge could be in first place by the end of the weekend, or in 5th place, because Halifax is only a couple of points back, and just these dramatic shifts. It's setting up in a way that, regardless of where you finish, obviously there are clear advantages to finishing higher in the table, but there are teams that could easily play spoiler come, Halifax is one of those teams. If they do finish 5th or 4th or wherever it is, that's not a team you want to face in the playoffs. There are, out of those 5 clubs, I can't pick a single club that I would actually want to play in the playoffs.
No, I agree. Every single game amongst those 5 clubs has been competitive as well. I think everyone has beaten everyone within those 5. And in a one-off match or a 2-legged match, I can't remember what it is, but I mean, it's who you couldn't guess. I wouldn't want to bet on any of those matches because they're too hard to call. It's testament to the league. Like, I think it's a really exciting league this year, and we're the lucky ones. We're the beneficiaries of that. So it's going to be a very nervy playoff, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I do want to, before we end things, I want to bring up, the strides made in women's soccer globally have been huge. World Cup is a testament to that. Wanderers announcing the launch of a semi-pro women's team set to compete in League One Atlantic, which is a new organization starting next year. Wanderers will field both men's and women's teams in the league, with the goal of having a fully professional women's team based out of Halifax, which is huge. Forge has done some great things for women in sports with the annual Spark Summit that they host. But the Wanderers doing some pioneering in their own right. I mean, still a ways to go, but things really seem to be trending in the right direction. And for the CPL clubs to play a vital role in that, everyone kind of has to be a part of it. And just kind of your thoughts on where the Wanderers stand and kind of taking a lead in this direction.
Yes, it's excellent. And I mean, it's no more than you'd expect for the club, really. We've always said, for as much of a struggle as some of the years were on the pitch, off the pitch, the club has barely ever put a foot wrong. The marketing's always been spot on, and kind of the way they conduct themselves morally and ethically. I think the fans have always felt quite proud to be represented by them in the league. So this is just another example of that. And I think as a market, Halifax would 100% support a women's team. I think it would do really, really well from an attendance perspective. It's long been my dream to have on the weekends where we're not playing at home, the men's team aren't playing at home, to have a women's team playing at home. So you never actually have to leave. So hopefully that happens sooner rather than later. But yeah, it's fantastic, and I can't wait till that day comes when it's alternate weekends watching the men's and the women's team. So yeah, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. What's your cat's name?
Saja. So she's from Korea, and some students chose her name when I was working in Korea, and Saja means lion in Korean. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you can get back to your lion, because I'm feeling guilty now. I don't want to be on the wrong side.
At the door, I feel quite bad as well.
Poor thing. All right. Listen, always a pleasure.
Thank you, mate.
It's always fun talking to you, and I think we're in for a good one this weekend.
I'll speak to you towards the end of the season, I'm sure.
All right. That was Gary, and here are your 3 keys to the match for Forge FC taking on Halifax this weekend. Key number 1, get it right. Halifax has reinvented the left side of their lineup. Mentioned him earlier. Wesley Timoteo, a guy who's been a number 10, converted to left back. It's added a new layer to the Wanderers' build, their attack. Lorenzo Caligari will also line up on the left side of that midfield often. That means Forge's right side, they're going to have to play the role of disruptor when they do not have the ball. It means tightly marking your man, taking away time and space to some of the skill guys that can create big chances for Halifax. Just make life miserable for that left side of the Halifax attack. Key number 2 for Forge FC, take the trench. When Halifax is rolling, they are winning the midfield battles. It's not their forward stirring the drink. It's the creation through the trenches. Fortunately, Forge has the deepest box-to-box midfield in the league. And so this match could very well come down to which midfield can control the game in all 3 areas of the pitch. Key number 3 for Forge FC, possessed. One of the best ways to control the midfield and slow down the left side of that Wanderers build, it's possession. Forge is the league leader in possession, as expected, but they got away from that last game against York, and it cost them, quite frankly. The club is at their best when they possess. It's how they control the game, and it's the best way to frustrate your opponent. Halifax has some quality in that lineup. They do not want to spend the majority of the match defending, but they will have no choice if Forge plays that possession game that we've become just so used to over the years. Now, before we wrap things up, Spark Summit. It's coming up. Huge event. One of my favorite events. One of the best events I've ever been to. That was last year. It's September 9th. Spots will fill up quickly, so make sure you secure yours at forgefc.ca/Spark Summit. Announced this week, Megan Cheka has been announced as a featured speaker at the summit. She'll lead a conversation with a group of expert panelists as she gives her insight into women in the sports business. Megan is a co-founder and the CEO of Stathletes, a hockey data and analytics company providing industry-leading hockey insights in over 22 leagues worldwide. She was featured in the top 100 of Power and Influence list. She was ranked in the top 10 for hockey business executives. So she is a very prominent personality, businesswoman, and she's going to be involved in the Spark Summit. She will be there. You can listen to her speak. And hosting the event back this year, Jacqueline Dory. She hosted last year, did an incredible job, super talented, Toronto-based host and producer with 9 years of experience in the sports industry. And she got her start with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, which is when I met her way back when. And Jackie now works at CBC Sports, covering 4 Olympics, 4 Paralympic Games, and various World Cups and World Championships. Also the producer and host at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, covering and producing videos for events like the Stanley Cup, NHL Draft, NHL All-Star Game. So that is just a sneak peek. Those are just 2 names that have been announced. More will come. Secure your spot for the September 9th event by visiting forgefc.ca/Spark Summit. As for Forge FC, a massive 3 points on the line this week in a potential major swing in the standings on deck. Saturday night, Tim Hortons Field, 7 o'clock start time. forgefc.ca/tickets to get yours. I'll be there. I hope to see you there. And we will talk to you very soon, because immediately following that match, a live match in review will take place. Just head on over to the Forge FC YouTube channel and we will deliver the goods. Instant reaction to whatever the result is on Saturday. Okay, we'll talk to you then.
Forge FC is prepared, and now you are informed. This has been Match Day Preview with Anthony Urciuoli on the Forge Audio Network. Subscribe on Spotify